Okay, let's dive right into this. You know, in our previous explainer, we talked all about the messy, bloody, and honestly fascinating creation of the world. We saw how the gods basically built our earthly realm, Midgard, right out of the fallen body of the primordial giant Ymir. But as wild as that story is, the realm of humans, it's just one tiny piece of this massive cosmic puzzle. So today, we're zooming way, way out. We're going to look at the grand architecture of the entire Norse universe. Which brings up a really good question, doesn't it? If the gods created the human world, what exactly is holding the whole thing together? Like, where is Midgard actually sitting in the grand scheme of things? To really grasp the Viking worldview, we've got to shift our perspective. We have to look away from the dirt and the oceans of our own domain and look up. We need to look up toward an immense, living organism that acts as the literal scaffolding for reality itself. So, here is our cosmic guided tour for today. First, we'll look at the Norse cosmic map. Then, we'll break down the anatomy of Yggdrasil. After that, we'll explore the realms of light, followed by chaos, elements, and death. And finally, we'll wrap up with the cycle of existence. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the Norse cosmic map. Now, to really understand this universe, you kind of have to toss out everything you know about floating planets and solar systems. Just forget about them for a minute. Instead, I want you to picture a colossal, living pillar that supports the weight of absolutely everything that exists. This is the cosmic ash tree, Yggdrasil. And what's really interesting about its name is that it widely translates to Odin's steed. See, Yg is another name for Odin, and Dressel means horse. This is a direct callback to that famous myth where Odin actually hangs himself from the branches of this very tree just to gain cosmic wisdom. The tree is, quite literally, the vehicle for his enlightenment. In mythological terms, we call a structure like Yggdrasil an axis mundi. So it's not just an extraordinarily large plant, it is the world axis. Its branches stretch way up into the heavens, its trunk firmly anchors the middle world of humans, and its roots, they plunge deep, deep down into the unknown of the underworld. It's the singular, unifying structure that organizes the entire universe, both spatially and spiritually. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of Yggdrasil. As you can imagine, a tree of this unbelievable magnitude isn't just made of wood and leaves. It is a highly complex, magical ecosystem. And it's all anchored by 3 massive roots, with each one drinking from a very sacred source. The first root reaches straight into the divine realm of Asgard, and it's fed by the Well of Erd. That's where the Norns literally weave the fate of all beings. The second root stretches way out into Jotunheim, the land of the giants, tapping into Mimir's well, which is this incredibly deep source of knowledge and memory. And then the third root plunges all the way down into the dark, icy realm of Niflheim, drawing from the Hvergelmir spring, the origin point of countless cosmic rivers. So through these roots, the tree is constantly interacting with fate, with wisdom, and with primordial origins. And it brilliantly illustrates how alive this cosmos is, because this tree is absolutely crawling with a bizarre menagerie of creatures. Way up at the very top, there's a watchful, unnamed eagle, and right between its eyes, a hawk named Veðurfólnir, perched there just for extra sharp sight. Then, all the way down at the bottom, you have the dragon Níðhöggr, who is constantly gnawing at the roots, just doing his best to bring down the cosmic order. And running furiously between the two of them is Ratatoskr. He's a squirrel whose sole purpose in life is to scurry up and down the trunk delivering insulting messages back and forth. He is essentially the ancient Norse equivalent of an internet troll. Meanwhile, you've got 4 magical stags just continuously munching on the tree's leaves. It's such an amazing representation of a universe locked in this constant, buzzing cycle of feeding, communication, and decay. Now, all of this sprawling life supports a very specific number of realms, 9 of them to be exact. The ancient Norse texts talk a lot about these 9 worlds, or New Heimar, but again, keep in mind, these aren't planets floating out in the vacuum of space. They are distinct domains for different beings. Gods, giants, humans, elves, dwarves, the dead, they are all perfectly nestled somewhere within the branches and roots of this single, massive tree. When you map it all out, these realms are arranged spatially and symbolically. Up in the highest, innermost regions, you have the divine domains. Midgard, our human realm, sits right in the middle, and then down at the roots, or way out on the far outer edges, you find the hostile giants, the underworld, and those completely chaotic, primordial forces of ice and fire. Let's scale up those branches for Section 3, the realms of light. Starting our journey at the very top, we visit the domains of order. Now, the divine sphere is actually split between two different tribes of gods. On one hand, you have Asgard. This is an elevated, heavily fortified stronghold for the Aesir, gods you definitely know, like Odin and Thor. Asgard is all about order, authority, and martial power, and it's where you'll find Valhalla, the great hall of fallen warriors. But right alongside them, living in total peace, is Vanaheim. This is the realm of the Vanir gods, like Freya and Freyr. Vanaheim is a wildly lush, fertile world that focuses heavily on nature, wealth, and magic. Now, these two factions actually fought a massive, brutal war at one point in time, but eventually they exchanged hostages and integrated with each other, which perfectly shows that cosmic stability actually requires a balance between martial strength and natural fertility. Sharing this upper tier of the tree is Alfheim, the home of the light elves. Now, the original texts don't actually give us a ton of detail about Alfheim, but it is described as being incredibly radiant. The elves themselves, they're said to be more beautiful than the sun. They act as these powerful nature spirits tied to light, inspiration, and creativity. And it's strongly hinted that the Vanir god Freyr actually rules over Alfheim, which closely ties those fertile, natural energies together. Dropping down from the canopy into the center of the tree, we find Midgard. This translates literally to the middle enclosure, and it's the human world. We are right in the center of everything. And to protect us humans from the terrifying giants out there, the gods actually fortified Midgard's borders using the eyebrows of the dead giant Ymir. No, really. We are connected up to the gods by Bifröst, that famous burning rainbow bridge, but we're also kind of trapped here. The whole realm is ringed by this vast, impassable ocean, and lurking deep in those waters is Jormungand. He's the great world serpent, and he's so massive he wraps entirely around our world and literally bites his own tail. All right, let's head downwards in Section 4, Chaos, Elements, and Death. Because let me tell you, if we leave the safety of that middle enclosure, things get incredibly dangerous incredibly fast. Out beyond our protective barriers lies Jotunheim, the land of the Jotnar, or the giants. And this isn't just a town full of really tall people. Jotunheim represents wild, untamable chaos. It's this foreboding realm of dark forests, jagged mountains, and just unrelenting winter. But what's fascinating is that because it is the absolute frontier of chaos, gods like Thor and Odin are constantly venturing out here. They go to battle monsters, or in Odin's case, to seek out ancient wisdom from Mimir's Ra, which happens to be hidden deep within this very hostile territory. Now, if we descend deep underground, we find Svartalfheim, which is also called Níðhöggr. This is the subterranean realm of the dwarves. Just picture this endless, claustrophobic network of twisting mines and roaring forges, lit up only by the glow of molten metal. The dwarves are the ultimate master craftsmen of the entire cosmos. In fact, all of the gods' greatest, most powerful tools, including Thor's legendary hammer, Mjolnir, and Odin's magical spear, Gungnir, they were forged right down here in this secret, fiery underground workshop. Pushing out to the absolute extremes of the cosmos, we hit two ancient primordial realms. These existed before literally anything else. At the lowest root of the tree is Niflheim, a world of primal ice, freezing mist, and pitch-black waters. And directly opposite to it is Muspelheim. This is a terrifying realm of uncontrolled, totally consuming fire, guarded by the fire giant Surtur. But here's the coolest part. The sparks flying out of Muspelheim's fires, those were actually used by the gods to create the stars in our night sky. It's a great reminder that this entire universe was born from the violent collision of ultimate cold and ultimate heat. Finally, deep down near those icy roots, we find Hel, or Helheim. Now, it is absolutely crucial to separate this from the later Christian concept of a fiery, punishing hell. They are not the same thing. In Norse cosmology, hell is simply the underworld destination for folks who die ordinary deaths, from sickness or old age, rather than dying gloriously in battle. It's ruled by the half-living, half-dead goddess Hel, who happens to be Loki's daughter, and the realm itself is just a cold, dim, shadowy continuation of existence. The dead there still eat, they drink, they live. It's just a muted, quiet version of the life they used to have. And that brings us to Section 5, the cycle of existence. So what does this massive, incredibly intricate map of 9 interconnected realms actually mean for the Norse worldview? Well, the crucial point here is that this entire universe operates purely on tension. Think about it. Order versus wildness, summer versus winter, life versus death. Yggdrasil is absolutely not a peaceful, static tree. Not at all. It is constantly being eaten by stags, it's getting gnawed on by a dragon, it's being battered by chaotic storms. It is a highly stressed, continuously damaged ecosystem, but it is deeply, deeply balanced. It perfectly reflects the worldview that life itself is hard. It's constantly under threat, yet it remains beautiful and is sustained by these interconnected roots. And this profound sense of balance points to an incredible truth about Ragnarok, the Norse apocalypse. See, when the fire giant Surtur finally burns the world and massive floods completely consume Midgard, the visible world does fall. But Yggdrasil, despite trembling violently, it survives. The texts say it remains evergreen. And because the tree survives, a brand new, fertile world can eventually rise right out of the ashes. Yggdrasil symbolizes ultimate continuity. It's the deep-seated belief that the underlying structure of existence can withstand, quite literally, any disaster. Which leaves us with this final thought. We obviously don't live on a giant cosmic ash tree, but we do rely on incredibly fragile systems that sometimes feel like they're constantly under attack. So, when our own visible world faces chaos and destruction, what are the deep roots and underlying structures that will persist to support our next cycle? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you look up at the branches of an old tree. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.